Microsoft is peddling a new refund window, and Studio The Chinese Room is crying about it. Let's chat about refunds down in the comments, but first, my opinion. I'm Tarmac, and this is Feature Creep. Through the Xbox Insider Program dashboard, a nifty little screenshot arrived on the Xbox subreddit, showing a new self-service refund system listed as being available for Xbox One and Windows 10. All a user has to do is go to their account, log in, hit up payment and billing, followed by order history, they pick the game they're not happy with, and they click request a refund. So, how does this refund system work? What are the rules? Well, it's close to the same as Steam, basically. You have 14 days after purchase or 2 hours of gameplay before you can refund a title. The game has to have actually been downloaded and run, forcing folks to have actually tried the title, which is a little bit silly because often people will want a refund even if they haven't played a game based on reviews when they've pre-purchased something. For some reason, people have to wait until the day after the game has released before they can ask for a refund on it, and DLC, season passes, and add-ons are not eligible for the self-service system. Importantly though, Microsoft of course also reserves the right to block access to the refund system to people who abuse it. Now, I'm a bit disappointed that Microsoft went with a less than carbon copy of the Steam refund system because, while it's better than nothing, that's still not the same as being really good. Steam offers a 14-day 2-hour refund window as well, but also includes timers on DLC and enabling refunds of in-game purchases for developers. Meanwhile, Origin maintains a 24-hour window after you launch the game for the first time and within 7 days of purchase or release if pre-ordered. Though of course that means you'd better have some time blocked aside to play right away, and unfortunately this is only on EA first-party and participating third-party titles. Clearly, gamers that have heard about this change for Xbox One and Windows 10 digital game purchases are pretty stoked because it's definitely better than the not refund that existed before it. Not everybody is happy though. To quote BAFTA-winning studio The Chinese Room, makers of Dear Esther, Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, and more via Twitter, quote, "Bit depressed about Xbox jumping on the 2-hour refund, bollocks arsehole, why, you fools cannot sustain normal temper, WTF, modern culture," end quote. Modern culture indeed. How dare companies take a consumer benefiting stance in our modern culture, am I right? The issue at play here though, and what a rather significant portion of people both on the consumer and business side seem to believe, is that refunds are for the consumer's benefit, which is actually a mere tangential benefit. No, friends, Romans, countrymen, brothers, sisters, gamers of all makes and models, refunds are a sales tool. The idea of refunds being primarily a consumer-focused protection mechanism is really only true when it's mandated by the government, like the fit-for-purpose rules in the UK. If an outside group has to lay down the law and force you to stand behind your products, in that instance you can claim the primary purpose is for the end consumer of a product. However, you'll notice as you scan around the various storefronts, businesses, whether online or brick and mortar, that very few of them seem to peg their refund policies at the barest of minimum guidelines. Why do you suppose that is? Let's go through a few. Walmart has a 90-day refund on most items, with 15 days on electronic hardware, though they also prohibit game returns alongside movies and music. Best Buy does the same, but has something of a loyalty period, with 15 days being standard, 30 days for Best Buy Elite members, and 45 days for Elite Plus. Costco, the shining star of product confidence, maintains an essentially limitless refund on most products they sell, with a 90-day term on electronics. Conveniently though, video games are classified under toys, not electronics, so as many have discovered, you can actually return video games at Costco with the best policy that exists worldwide under their 100% satisfaction guarantee. You might be saying, most of those companies don't accept refunds on video games, and you'd be right. Because in each case, the company cannot resell the product because they can't verify you don't still have access to it because of online account redemption. Put simply, you could redeem a PC game on your Steam account, and returning the box is meaningless. So, I started this piece by saying that refunds aren't consumer protection, and while they do have that added side benefit, I stand by the statement as the interests of the consumer are not the primary focus. Refunds instead are a sales and marketing tool. Costco, with their diamond-studded refund policy, is effectively communicating to every customer that shops in their stores that you as a customer have absolutely zero risk when shopping there. Does that increase sales? The idea of gutting the concept of buyer's remorse by letting people know that pretty well no matter what happens, they're safe in making a purchase with you. They don't even need to do a lot of product research, checking reviews, reading loads of other sources before they decide to buy something. Does that increase sales? You're goddamn right it does, and we're not talking a few bucks here or there. We're talking high percentage increases. According to a study done by the Journal of Marketing in 2012 under the American Marketing Association, including customer spending trends over 49 months, it was found that when customers are provided free return shipping on items, that over the next 2 years, their purchases increased somewhere between 58 and 357%, while when having to pay return shipping, purchases decreased between 74 and 100%. This is not the difference between a zero refund and an open refund policy, but it demonstrates just how powerful reducing return barriers is in influencing customer purchase behavior. It shows to the customer that by purchasing from a particular store, that customer has little to no risk in buying something from you, and dramatic purchase increases occur as a result. And customers do like to do their research, with a 2015 UPS study suggesting upwards of 88% of customers check online store return policies before buying something. To take that a step further, according to a study by TrueShip, at the time they're called ReadyCloud now, it's an e-commerce platform, over 80% of customers say they're more loyal to stores that have a generous return policy, and over 70% are less likely to buy from stores with a restrictive one. In many cases, in fact, a longer refund window can also actually decrease refunds on an individual basis. This is theorized to be the result of something in psychology referred to as the endowment effect. Customers who feel like they have ownership of a product are less likely to return it. And the longer someone feels that ownership, the stronger their feeling of ownership manifests itself. Effectively, this means that if a customer doesn't feel rushed by a short return period like a 7-day or 14-day window, but instead is provided a longer time frame, they're less likely to rush the return because of that looming deadline. And that chance drops even further due to the longer refund window expiry because of that feeling of ownership increasing as time goes on. In short, longer, less restrictive refund windows let customers get more invested in owning a product. Since the Chinese room reacted so heavily to the Xbox refund policy leak, it's probably not a bad idea to address the reason for their concern. On average, only about 0.5% of total sales represent fraudulent returns. This quite simply indicates that people are, in general, good, reasonable folk who only want to return products that were genuinely unsatisfying. Personally, I think that it's absolutely abhorrent that the Chinese room development house thinks that a significant portion of their customers are effectively scammers or thieves. But that's what you have to believe, that a solid number of your customers are going to actively buy your games and attempt to refund even if nothing was wrong with the product, to come out swinging like they did on Twitter. Or they're very misled. There is a commonly held belief online that an open refund policy will be rife with abuse, with gamers turning on developers in some kind of Hunger Games fight to the death over a few dollars. Yes, absolutely, a digital product where you can request a refund while sitting in your skivvies without having to actually get in the car, go to the store, stand in line, and ask for your money back from a person is an easier refund. The key to a solid refund system, though, is customer tracking. To get back to the Costco example, they know exactly what you refund and when because it's tied to your Costco membership. It's much the same way that Valve, Microsoft, EA also precisely know what you refund and when because it's tied to your account. By monitoring refunds, looking for anomalies indicating abuse, they can easily curb that nonsense so that folks doing this on a regular basis can be removed from the system that's there to benefit everyone else. Costco does the same thing. I've been hunting high and low to try to find sources that indicate or even suggest that digital returns would be a higher percentage of overall sales, only to turn up empty-handed. The closest I can find is that online retail sales returns tend to be higher than brick-and-mortar returns, but that's most likely due to an increase in the wrong product being shipped or the sales page not matching the product, something numerous studies confirm. Only game-related data we have is where a few scared indie devs saw high refund numbers right after the Steam refund system went into action. But sites like Kotaku wanted clicks more than facts and neglected to report that refunds were being offered on historical purchases as well as current ones. So of course the rate was high for that period of time, especially when it was being compared against small indie sales numbers where current sales were less than 12 units sold a day. You only need 6 returns to get a 50% return rate on 12 sales in a day. Not exactly a statistically significant representation of reality. The biggest issue in combating the perception of high fraudulent returns is something that retail stores have had to deal with a lot, but online stores don't really have this issue due to the account-bound nature of the business. The complication of revoking access to the product that all of these companies selling retail games run into is completely negated by digital platforms. In the event of a refund request, the product is just removed from your account. It's that simple. There's also no return expense or hassle on the part of the store for having to deal with sending products back to distributors, which is an added pain in the butt for retail stores. And curbing abuse is a simple matter of setting your return threshold, as Steam and Microsoft both openly say that they do with their refund systems to avoid abuse. The fact of the matter is that people overwhelmingly keep products they were satisfied with, and digital purchases are no different from retail goods in that way. Though I will admit that it probably doesn't help much that the game industry likes to remind us on a nearly constant basis that we don't own our video games. The average person is only going to refund a product if they actually feel unsatisfied with the experience, regardless of what percentage of the game they've completed, because the average person is actually a moral creature who understands and feels bad returning something without a good reason. All of these buyer confidence moves based on the return policy itself result in a higher amount of money spent on your store. Customers are willing to take the risk buying from you where they wouldn't before because of a solid refund policy. Existing customers choose to take more chances with products for the same reason. It builds immense customer loyalty, and at the end of the day, as long as you track for abuse, there won't be a widespread account library exodus. There's this notion that it hurts game devs by letting people refund all the time, but as I said earlier, people are overwhelmingly moral creatures where it comes to returns. And that, combined with a proper abuse tracking system, means that really only the developers of crappy games have anything to worry about. In fact, it's not all that uncommonly held that you can have a return rate that is too low. A low rate of return in many cases can indicate that customers are apprehensive when buying, leaving money on the table because they're afraid of being burned by a bad purchase. Whereas a higher rate of return, because of a more generous refund policy, accompanies an even larger rate of overall sales. Let's say you increase sales by 25% and returns by 100%. Would you rather have a 6% return rate on 100,000 in sales or a 12% return rate on 125,000 in sales? Here's a hint. The second one with the higher return rate made more money. Now, as much as I maintain that being a critic doesn't require that I necessarily have solutions to the problems identified, in this case, I do have a few. The first and most obvious to me is the silliness that is this 14-day limitation on games that you have never played. All digital game stores have player tracking, knowing precisely when someone has played a title, so instituting a blanket 30-day return policy on unplayed games is a no-brainer. And of course, incentivizes purchases, especially during deep sales, even if the gamer in question doesn't have the time to play the game right now. Another model could be allowing people to exchange games for store credit rather than a cash return outside of the normal time frame. To put some practicality to this, perhaps there's a 2-hour time limit for a cash return and a 5 to 10 hour window where the exchange is for store credit, keeping the money internal to the system. This is a big deal in retail purchases, as according to the 2015 UPS Pulse of the Online Shopper study, 42% of people will make a second purchase when processing a return. A combined incentive with a more generous policy alongside recommended purchases and store credit options increases the likelihood of an immediate purchase on something else right afterwards. And finally, I would like to suggest that while there is a heavy level of artistic concern over people experiencing the whole game from start to finish and refunding it anyways even if they were satisfied with it, there is no evidence to suggest that this would be a wide-ranging phenomenon. People like having big game libraries, they like playing lots of different games. With the combination of fraud prevention tracking by way of your Xbox or Steam account, the basic moral compass of humanity, and all of the numbers that I've thrown at you espousing the benefits of how removing barriers to returns increases sales, I think it's entirely reasonable to say that a much more open return policy would be not just good for gamers, but developers as well. In my researched opinion, the overall revenue would increase noticeably with something as wide as a 14-day no questions asked cash and 30-day no questions asked store credit refund policy. It still requires the same fraud prevention mechanisms that they all employ already, but just think of how many times you've almost bought a game because it might be great, but you weren't sure. To close up, I did a video a little while back on how I believe that requesting refunds is almost always ethical, whether you get the refund or not, and I'll link that video down below. I received a fair amount of heat because of a misguided perception that this somehow hurts developers. In short, because customers want good games and developers want to make good games, by allowing people to not just refund what they're not satisfied with, but also ensuring that they have that knowledge ahead of time, which dramatically increases the number of games they'll purchase, it's not just ethical, but also makes more money as well. Ultimately, the question to ask in all of this is whether or not sales would increase at a rate higher than the increase in returns by a more lenient refund policy. To quote Craig Atkins, the VP of Services and Operations at Zappos, quote, "Our best customers have the highest returns rates, but they're also the ones that spend the most money with us and are our most profitable customers." End quote. Where do you stand on refund policies? Does the Microsoft return do enough? Or should there be a better refund policy? And if there were, are you one of the many millions of gamers that I believe would spend a lot more on games if you knew getting burned was a thing of the past? Let's chat about it down in the comments. Feature Group is a regular show on the channel, provided free of YouTube ads, courtesy of the backers over on patreon.com/Tarmac. Feel free to follow me at Gnomecast on Twitter for short-form industry chat, Tarmac Gaming on Twitch for weekly live streams, and subscribe here to keep up with the videos I try my best to push out every week. That's all I have to say. Tarmac out.